Welcome back, everybody, to the Wandering Samurai Study, in which we review and analyze every single act told in Rurouni Kenshin, and today's act is Act 54, the one who stops the two. I think that Watsuki realized that the last couple of acts have been a little bit too tense, because it seems that he realized that he has Yahiko here, and he's used Yahiko for some comedic relief. I like that the anime decided not to incorporate some of the jokes that we have here with Yahiko, but I appreciate it here in the manga because anytime that Yahiko can make me smile, I think it's always a good thing. It's also showing us that things are really lightening up from here on out, that the big hard part is basically over, and Yahiko lightening up things is just kind of a sign that things are going to start to wind down. If the title of the act did not tell you that this is the end of the fight, I think Yahiko doing his thing is what kind of implies that. So let's go ahead and get into the chapter summary review, and we'll go from there. Saito and Kenshin continue their fight, and Kaoru begs for someone to stop them as she reveals to Yahiko that it's not Kenshin fighting but Hitokiri Batosai, and Sanosuke makes his big return. Saito attacks with a broken sword, and Hitokiri Batosai is about to finish Saito off. Saito removes his belt, blocking Batosai's attack, punching him numerous times and wrapping his coat around Batosai's neck in an attempt to break it. Batosai breaks the neck hold by slamming his sword sheath to uppercut Saito's neck. Now, with both of the men on the floor, the audience watches in shock, and Kaoru makes one more plea to stop them. As the two men go for their final strike, the fight is broken up by the Superintendent General and the Chief of Internal Affairs, Okubo Toshimichi. And this act marks the return of Sanosuke to the manga and his entrance to this fight. Sanosuke is playing a role just as the way that the other characters are playing. Watsuki remembers that he has Yahiko and that he can use him to kind of lighten the tension. He has Kaoru play a little bit of that, but Kaoru is still playing her role as the one who wants this fight to stop more than anyone else. Seems that Yahiko is just kind of watching it, believing that Kenshin can do this, and Sanosuke is here to play the commentator. There are two examples of Sanosuke playing the commentator. One when Kaoru makes a plea for them to stop, anybody to stop them, and that's when Sanosuke comes in and he says that the two men cannot hear them. Their voices cannot reach them as they are fighting in the Bakumatsu. They are no longer fighting in the Meiji with us. Commentating on such things as that these two men are fighting the way that they fight in the Bakumatsu, showcasing to the generation in the Meiji and us, the audience, that these are the types of fights that you would see during the Bakumatsu. The blood, the pushing each other's to the edges when you should retreat and choosing to not retreat because of your samurai pride. I think that the reason for Sanosuke being here to commentate, though, it's because Sanosuke is an experienced fighter and he's been in many brawls before. He kind of knows the headspaces that these two men are in, and he can better explain the situation at hand rather than having Saito or Kenshin chime in, because as this fight between these two men, if they're selling the idea that these two men are no longer thinking about what's around them, having somebody there to commentate and knows what he's looking at when fighting, it's a good way to kind of balance that out and still have the two men focus solely on each other. Now let's move on to the final reveal of the chapter. Okubo. At the end of the last chapter, Saito explains that he has explicit orders that he's now going to ignore so that he can fight Kenshin the way that Kenshin or Batosai is challenging him. Okubo needed to be in this act. As I said in the beginning of the video, Yahiko is a sign that things are winding down. Okubo is here to make sure that the fight is over and that whatever is being set up, he can continue going, because the fight can continue going on for as long as you think it could be interesting, but having Saito and Kenshin continue fighting when they're not really meant to be fighting, it could be just dragging it out for the sake of dragging it out. And I think that this is a lot more interesting, having somebody completely left field, somebody completely random coming into the mix. The touch with Tsubame, who is screaming out in public, the way that the chapter is laid out, the way that the page or that panel was panned out, being at the edge of the page and having it blank underneath it, so that we would flip the page and see the horse carriage, was a nice little fake out, because Tsubame screaming, it could have just implied anything else. After you realize it's a horse carriage, you can see that it was a horse carriage, but I think it was ambiguous enough to kind of leave it up in the air that it could have been an unknown fighter coming to the scene, or attacking the Akabeko for whatever reason. I don't know, but I think it was a nice touch. But the big reveal at the end of the chapter, with Okubo's words that he does not wish for Kenshin and Saito to lose their lives or waste their lives here, it reveals that Saito is a part of something much bigger than we realized. And having Saito play the villain role up until now, it's a very interesting angle, to say the least, I guess, but I'd like to make a separate video on that, maybe. But the big mystery, we'll find out next chapter, and so we'll go ahead and pin it for now. And let's finish off the video by talking about Kenshin and Saito. As mentioned, Saito has orders that he's chosen to ignore. This tells me something about Saito, that Saito has a character flaw, I guess, in that he can lose himself in battle as well. There are bigger picture things that he cannot, above all, prioritize if the call to battle is calling. It seems that Saito can also lose himself in battle, just the way that the Hitokiri Batosai can lose himself as well. And because Batosai had every intention of killing Saito after Saito had pushed Kenshin to that point, Saito can not choose to walk away from it if it means that now somebody's coming after his life. And I think this all has to do with his pride as a swordsman, but also as the Shinsengumi. Batosai or Kenshin, whichever the two that you want to use in this particular scenario, says that the Shinsengumi really do not know when to retreat, and Saito rebuttals this by saying that if a swordsman were to flee, it's because they lack determination, meaning that the Shinsengumi are really tough, that their beliefs as swordsmen are first and foremost, their honor as swordsmen are like held to a very high and very specific standard, that he cannot walk away from a fight that is trying to kill him, I guess. He's gonna try and kill him, even if it means blowing off your orders, which I just thought was really interesting, a really interesting perspective for Saito to choose to ignore his orders, knowing that there are other things afoot. And Saito is extremely resourceful. Just because he has a broken sword, that doesn't mean that it's going to stop him. He is resourceful enough to think to use his belt in the heat of battle to block an attack, and then to use the very clothes that he's wearing, his coat, something that he would not be wearing if it was the Bakumatsu, if he would be wearing his traditional Shinsengumi clothing. To think to use the coat to try and to break your opponent's neck. Crazy, maddening. And I think the final thing worth noting in this chapter is that this is the furthest we've ever seen Kenshin be pushed to his limits. We've never seen Kenshin be brought to this point before, where he's breathing heavily, he's bleeding, he's exhausted, and he's still ready to fight, and he's embraced the full Hitokiri Batosai at this moment that he's ready to kill. It's God, the elevation of the story is up here. But this has been Act 54 of Rurouni Kenshin. If you like this video and you want to see more, then consider subscribing to the channel. We will be coming back for the conclusion of this Saito stuff in Act 55. Leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and comment down below something that you liked about this video, or comment something that you liked about this act. What is your favorite Rurouni Kenshin fight? Because I think I mentioned in not this video or last video, I think, or the video before that, that the Saito versus Kenshin fight is probably my favorite fight in the Rurouni Kenshin story. So I'm kind of curious, what is yours? Let me know down below, and I'd happily talk to you guys in the comments. Until next time, bye-cha.
Kaoru?
Yamenka!